Hello and welcome everyone to the meeting of the Plans Committee on Thursday the 22nd of January 2026 for Charnwood Borough Council. Please could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent. May I remind all those present that this meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel and that by attending the meeting you are given your consent to be filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside of the Council's control. May I remind members of the public to be considerate of the committee and officers throughout the meeting and to remain quiet unless speaking as part of an allocated speaking slot. Any disruption outside of the formal speaking arrangements, for example by speaking or applauding in reaction to any contributions from officers, members of the committee or public speakers, is unacceptable and may lead to the adjournment of the meeting and members of the public being asked to leave. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Rhys Corey-Loseley. I'm normally Vice Chair of the Plans Committee, however I'll be acting as Chair this evening as we've had apologies from the Chair, Councillor Lenny. Other members joining us on the Plans Committee this evening are Councillor Boker, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Haynes, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, who is on her way, she'll be here in a moment, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Smidovitz, and Councillor Taylor-Durant. The planning officers present this evening are Ms Liggins, Mr Reid and Mr Worley. Our lead officer for the evening is Mr Upton. Our Democratic Services officer is Ms Dobson. I would like to welcome Mr Howarth, our legal advisor for the evening. It is good practice for the Plans Committee to appoint a vice chair for the meeting when needed. So do we have any proposals for a acting vice chair at this meeting? No? Proposed Councillor Fryer. I second that. All those in favour? I'm sure you'll do ably, Councillor Fryer. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it and can be found on the agenda page for the Plans Committee for 22nd of January 2026. Could I ask that members of the committee use their microphones every time they speak to ensure that viewers of the live stream and recording can hear the discussion. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Ms Dobson. We have received a late request to speak from Mr Darrell Godfrey, an objector for item 5A, P/24/1605/2, land at Maplewell Road, Woodhouse Heaves. Could I ask the committee if they're happy for Mr Godfrey to speak? Yeah, show of hands. Excellent, wonderful, thank you. We've had 2 requests from all councillors who have called in applications for the chair, for the chair to read statements on their behalf, as they are unable to attend this meeting due to other commitments. Councillor Wesley was due to be speaking on item 5B, P/22/1947/2, Quarry Hill Grange Residential Home, Watling Street, Mount Sorrel. And Councillor Bradshaw was due to be speaking on item 5D, P/25/2155/2, 389 New Ashby Road, Loughborough. Can I ask if the committee is happy for me to read the statements out on their behalf? Show of hands. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us on to item 1, apologies. Ms Dobson, have we received any apologies?
I confirm we've received apologies from Councillor Infield and Councillor Haynes will be substitute. We've received apologies from Councillor Seaton and Councillor Boker will be substitute. And we have received apologies from Councillor Lenny and Councillor Roberts will be substitute.
Excellent, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms Dobson. Item 2, minutes of previous meetings. Is the committee happy to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meetings held on the 11th of December and 18th of December 2025? Show of hands, all those in favour? Yep, thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record and I will sign them at the end of the meeting. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms Dobson, have we received any questions?
I confirm no questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. Ms Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interests?
Councillor Corey Losley, you've declared that some of the objectors are known to you regarding item 5A, which is P241605/02, land at Maplewell Road, Woodhouse Eaves, but you've confirmed that you come to the meeting with an open mind.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any other disclosures of interest? Councillor Fryer.
Thank you. Chair, I note, I have been in Surrey this morning, but I note when I was checking my email, an email was sent to all members of the Plans Committee regarding 5A, I believe. I have not read it, but I think it should be drawn to the committee's attention.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fryer. All those who've received this email, raise your hands now to declare an interest.
So Councillor Corey Losley, Fryer, Good, O'Neill, Palmer, Smidowitz, and Taylor Durant. And do you all come to the meeting with an open mind?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Can I just check? Was the email from the applicant? Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, are there any other disclosures before we move on? I've got Councillor O'Neill and then Councillor Smidowitz. Councillor O'Neill.
Item P/22/1947/2, Quarry Hill Grange residential home. I am a resident of Mount Sorrel, so I know this building and I walk my dog past there occasionally, so I am aware of it, but I come to this meeting with an open mind. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Smidowitz.
I would like to step down for 5D, P/25/2155/2.
Thank you, Councillor
I
Smidowitz.
have views.
That's noted. Thank you. Moving on. Item 5, planning applications, and that brings us to item 5A, P/24/1605/2, land at Maplewell Road, Woodhouse Eaves. I would like to refer to the planning officer for this application, Ms Liggins.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Can I just start by drawing your attention to the extras report for this item, which I'm sure you would have read and digested. It deals with correspondence received since the publication of the agenda and typos in the report. So this application relates to land to the west of Maplewell Road. Members may recall that the site was the subject of another Reserve Matters application prior to Christmas, when members granted planning permission for the erection of 36 homes on the site. The current application is for the approval of an alternative Reserve Matters development stemming from the appeal proposal and relates to 15 new homes. So the outline application considered the means of access, and these details are already approved. The outline planning application also was accompanied by a completed Section 106 agreement relating to developer contributions as set out in paragraph 9.12 of the officer report. So the application tonight's reported to Plans Committee at the request of Councillor Snart for the reasons published in paragraph 1.1. So this is a plan of the site, which is part of 2 parallel fields which fronts onto Maplewell Road. This is an aerial photograph showing the 2 fields at the centre. Approximately the front half of each field forms the totality of the housing development, which amounts to about 0.5 of a hectare, as shown in red on the previous slide. The land rises to the west such that there's a levels difference of approximately 12 metres between the highest westernmost point and the lowest eastern point. The site's bounded to the north by residential development within Woodhouse Eaves limits to development. The site itself is outside of those limits and is within countryside. The site's not within any conservation area, and there are no statutory listed buildings nearby. Number 155 Maplewell Road, opposite the southern field, is locally listed. So this slide, This slide shows a photo of the site taken from Maplewell Road, looking across the site from the south. The property to the right-hand side is number 155 Maplewell Road, which is the locally listed building I just mentioned. This photo is taken from the corner of 124 Maplewell Road and looking up into the site. You can see the private drive leading to number 128, which is at the rear. You'll notice the two fields which form the application site are divided by a hedge, which is to be removed, and there are trees dotted within the fields, with several of these also proposed to be removed. The application is accompanied by a comprehensive landscaping plan, which clearly indicates the trees to be retained and which are to be removed, together with significant new tree and other planting proposals. This slide shows the site frontage looking southwards up the hill of Maplewell Road. You'll notice the native hedgerow across the site frontage, which is to be retained and enhanced. This slide shows the existing cottages at 166 to 178 Maplewell Road. So this slide is the proposed layout as received on the 11th of September last year. This shows the development of 15 homes, with the majority accessed off a main shared road. The terrace cottages to the site frontage would benefit from rear parking provision. 3 larger detached homes would also be erected in recessed positions on Maplewell Road and serviced by a second vehicular access. The dwellings shown on in turquoise are the dwellings to be affordable rented homes, and those in green are the affordable homes for shared ownership. All the detached dwellings proposed on the site are 5-bed homes. Open space is proposed to the north and to the central area and within the yellow easement band which runs through the site. The layouts derive from a stepped topology in order that the retaining walls can feature between different ground levels within the site. And the land edged blue, as you can see on the plan to the west, is land retained in the ownership of the developer, which is to be planted as amenity space for biodiversity and landscape value, and there wouldn't be any public access to that site. So this slide shows a range of the typical house types proposed. And this slide shows an artist's impression of the development as viewed from the air opposite the site. You can see the access road leading upwards into the development, the public open space in the centre and to the north. You can also see how the proposal relates to the existing dwellings to the north of the site and the layout of the proposed plots. This slide shows an artist's impression of a street scene comprising 3 of the dwellings set to the rear and the western side of the land. So these are the key considerations relevant to the determination of this application, and each one is addressed in detail in the officer report from section 9 onwards, but there's a lot to go through, but I'll try to be quick. The principle and quantum of the residential development has already been established through the grant of the outline application. Since the allowed appeal decision, the Woodhouse Parish Neighbourhood Plan has been made in December 2021, and the Charnwood Local Plan has now been adopted. The application site isn't an allocation for housing in either of those documents and is outside the settlement boundary. Section 106 agreement attached to the outline application made provision for the amount of affordable housing, and this reserve matters has been assessed for compliance with the agreement and current related policies. And the consideration of affordable housing is set out in section 9.2 of the report. And whilst the proposed mix and number of each size of the market housing units doesn't fully accord with the optimum mix set out in HENA, the applicants put forward extenuating circumstances as to why this is justified. And that's set out in the officer report. So policy H1 of the new local plan states will seek a mix of house types, tenures and sizes that are in line with the most up-to-date evidence, but we'll take consideration of that whilst also having regard to the extent to which needs have already been met by other development, local housing needs and local market evidence, economic conditions, viability and site-specific circumstances. So taking all those factors into account and the applicant's justification, put forward in paragraph 9.210, the proposed mix of market and affordable housing units is considered acceptable. So a landscape and visual impact assessment was provided to the outline application, and the current proposal includes enhancement to the existing site boundaries and a comprehensive landscaping scheme for both the application site and the blue land area I referred to. The inspector, in considering the outline appeal, commented on the landscape character of the area and was aware of a illustrative master plan showing how the land might be developed for 36 units. And he concluded that although the site, the development of the site would introduce harms to the character and appearance of the countryside, the tilted balance approach taken when the appeal was decided concluded that this harm was outweighed by the benefits of the scheme, and the appeal was allowed nonetheless. So the accesses and the envisaged layout of the submitted scheme is in general accordance with the indicative master plan, but obviously with far fewer units now involved. The layout's looser, plots are generally larger, and this allows for more planting of trees and more open character to the site. However, no development of the site would be without landscape impacts, but the council's landscape officer is satisfied that the submitted planting and management proposals will provide a suitable scheme which will offer an appropriate degree of screening from the surrounding countryside and a good mix of colour and species within the new street scenes. So the landscaping impact of the scheme is considered to be acceptable. The layout, scale and appearance of the scheme are also given consideration in section 9.4 of the officer report. It's considered that the variety of house types, their architectural detailing and animation and visual interests are enhanced by the variety of finished floor levels, ridge heights and materials. And overall, the layout, scale and appearance of the development is considered acceptable. The proposed amount of typologies of open space are considered to provide good quality open space, proportionate in size and in accordance with the requirements of the 106 agreement. So amenity impacts discussed at section 9.6 of your agenda, and this includes an assessment of impact to existing neighbours and eventual occupiers of the homes. Excuse me. So overall, it's concluded that the proposal is in general compliance with policy DS4 and the requirements of the NPPF. So heritage impact is considered at section 9.7 and was an issue also considered by the planning inspector in determining the outline appeal. In particular, the impact the locally listed building at 155 Maplewell Road was considered, and it was concluded that the development of the application site would erode and cause harm to the significance of that property. But notwithstanding this harm, the appeal was allowed. It was considered that the reserve matters application before members tonight doesn't exacerbate that harm. So the impact of trees is set out in paragraph 9.8 of the report. The application is accompanied by an ARB method statement and a comprehensive landscaping plan, which includes new trees, and it's considered the proposal accords with the relevant policies of the development plan. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, the applicant has worked hard with council staff to ensure that all the relevant information to assess biodiversity impact has been submitted in order to achieve net gains which can be delivered. It's concluded that the scheme is acceptable in terms of ecological impact and accords with the policies set out in the report. In terms of flood risk, the site's entirely within flood zone 1, being land at least risk of fluvial flooding, and proposed drainage works. The LLFA confirm the submitted drainage details are acceptable and suggest a planning condition, but the extras report recommends that that condition be deleted from the recommendation because it's duplicated by a separate discharge of conditions application that deals with drainage matters. In terms of highways, the details of the proposed highways were considered as part of the outline, and this application is in accordance and conformity with those details that have already been approved. And the highway authorities confirm the traffic impacts of the scheme are acceptable. and notes that the internal road layouts don't currently meet the requirements for adoption, but it considers that the parking provision within the scheme is acceptable and in accordance with its design guide. Infrastructure provision in the Section 106 agreement, contributions were previously secured as detailed in the officer report and considered to be civil compliant. So to finish, the scheme is considered to be acceptable as set out in Section 10 of the officer report and would achieve a good quality housing scheme, which would also deliver an element of affordable homes and contribute to essential infrastructure, landscaping and biodiversity. So it's recommended that the reserve matters application be granted in accordance with the planning conditions following the officer report, with the exception of conditions 6 and 9 as set out in the extras report for the reasons that it explains. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Liggins. Okay, that brings us on to speakers. And the first speaker we have is Mr Darrell Godfrey, who's an objector. Mr Godfrey, would you like to come and sit just here? So when you're ready, you have 3 minutes to speak. And when 1 minute is remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know. If you could, are you familiar with the equipment? If you could just press the microphone. There we go. Yeah,
Yep.
whenever you're
Can
ready.
you hear me?
Can hear you
Okay.
loud and clear. Whenever you're ready.
I'd just like to establish this isn't an objection. Okay. My name is Darrell.
Noted, thank you.
Okay. My name is Darrell Godfrey. I've lived in Woodhouse Heath since 1999 and was involved in the village design statement in 2005. Since that was published, we have seen several small multi-house developments that have been in keeping with the guidelines and spirit of the statement. My wife and I have closely followed the plans for this development on Maplewell Road and have expressed our concerns at every stage, particularly regarding its size, location, design, impact on the village amenities, traffic safety and environmental impact. Most of these concerns have not been fully addressed by either of the two proposals, this one or the 36-house option approved here in December. However, we are where we are with this project, and in the interest of the village, we should ensure we build the better of these two options. I attended the presentation of the 15-house proposal by Davidson's last week, where there was a strong attendance by village residents. At the meeting, Davidson's did address two major questions that were raised, namely that there would be no further development on the site and that the nature area at the rear would be preserved, managed and maintained. They also confirmed that their preference is to build the 15-house development given its approval. The additional benefits to the residents of this plan would be the significant reduction in construction traffic and build duration, a greener and more open layout, and a reduction in resident car numbers. There are still some concerns that are not fully resolved. We feel the choice of materials, colours and architecture needs to be more in keeping with the principles of the design statement, particularly for the 6 terraced cottages. Davidson's did stress they are a design-led builder, so we hope this can be addressed during the next phase. In recent years, we have seen a major increase in on-street parking and traffic congestion in the village, particularly on Maplewell Road. Although this seems to be adequate off-street resident parking within the development, unless there is a cohesive plan to restrict on-street parking on Maplewell Road, combined with traffic calming measures, there will be further issues. So we strongly urge that this be reviewed with the Leicestershire County Council Highways. In summary, I believe that the option being discussed today with the improvements mentioned is more in keeping with the character and spirit of the village, and I recommend the committee to approve the proposal.
Thank you very much. And next we have Miss Helen Prangley, the agent. If you want to come take a seat, Miss Prangley. So when you're ready, Miss Prangley, you'll have 3 minutes. When 1 minute is remaining, Miss Dobson will let you know whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Helen Prangley and I represent Davidson's Developments, the applicant for this proposal. Davidson's Developments are a family-owned 5-star rated house builder with a track record of delivering quality housing throughout Leicestershire. The proposals for 15 dwellings are before you accords with the requirements of the outline application in providing 2 compliant access points. It will deliver a mix of house types of which 40% are affordable in accordance with the Section 106. This is a challenging site topographically, and this scheme will allow a sensitive landscape-led development that would result in a significant decrease in the amount of earthworks, associated material and retaining walls to the approved scheme for 36 by working with rather than against the slope of the site. The scheme before you this evening is a result of both pre-application discussion and community engagement, which has taken place for over a year to put forward a scheme which is both viable, works with the topography and provides substantial improvements to the original scheme. It also takes into account concerns of local residents at the outline appeal regarding traffic levels and impacts on the landscape. Davidson's have tested a number of scenarios in terms of alternative numbers for dwellings on the site, and it's considered that this provides the best and indeed only other alternative solution in terms of design, delivery of Section 106 contributions and affordable housing. This is exactly what the wording of H1, the housing mix policy, is designed to accommodate. The proposed scheme comprises high-quality bespoke properties that take cues from the surrounding area using local materials and designs, which are reflective of both small and large properties within the village and which provide ample off-street car parking. The proposals have demonstrated that they mitigate any effects on ecology and deliver a significant biodiversity net gain in habitat units, both on-site and within the Blue Line land. Thank you. There are no technical objections to the proposals from any of the statutory consultees, including highways. The committee report confirms that the benefits of the proposals outweigh the harms and that in accordance with local plan policy, a departure from a standard mix is justified in this instance. The planning officer has provided a comprehensive report concluding that the reserved matters should be approved. I respectfully request that members endorse this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Prangley. And when you're ready, we next have Mr Mervyn Greenlug on behalf of Woodhouse Parish Council. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes, and Ms Dobson will let you know when 1 minute is remaining, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Mervyn Greenhalgh. I'm here on behalf of the residents, local residents of Woodhouse Parish Council and Woodhouse Parish Council to express our support for Davidson's proposed 15-unit development on Maplewell Road. Davidson's hosted a public meeting last week for Woodhouse's residents, and we're delighted that 70 residents attended. At that meeting, they presented the proposal in detail and addressed a number of concerns that had previously been raised by residents. Excuse me. These included flood risk from surface water, the protection of the land behind the development from any future building, ensuring that the design and quality of the homes reflect the character of the village, potential road safety issues caused by parking outside the 6 terraced houses, and the level of disruption expected during construction. These matters prompted many questions from residents. Having considered the responses, we've concluded that this 15-unit scheme offers clear benefits. In particular, it provides landscape and topography-led design, a less dense layout with more green space and enhanced landscaping, and the retention of existing natural features. Construction impacts have been significantly reduced, and an 83% reduction in lorry movements, removing excavated material, and the overall build programme shortened by about 40%, which is very welcome. At the end of the meeting, attendees voted unanimously to support this proposal for 15 dwellings. We were also reassured by the conditions set out in the planning officer's recommendation. These include the protection of the land above the site, shown in blue from future development, and house designs that better reflect the village character through greater use of local materials such as stone and slate or similar. At the last planning meeting, members expressed concern about developing this land noting that they felt their hands were tied. We therefore ask you today to approve this alternative proposal, which represents a more sympathetic, sustainable, and community-supported approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, we have Ward Councillor, Councillor Snart. I take it you know the ropes, Councillor Snart, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand the position of the Parish Council and residents who preferred the proposal having a reduction in units on this site. I would also agree, especially this would reduce the level of traffic in comparison to the 36 units. This committee has already agreed, and the inspector stating 36 dwellings is a benefit I attach great weight. So that I am consistent with my comments over the two planning applications. I am not sure this proposal conforms to current policy, especially in terms of layout, scale, housing mix. In my view, this is the first test of policies within the new local plan. Policy H4, local plan. Affordable housing, new affordable housing should be delivered on site and integrated with market housing. Developers are expected to make efficient use of land, and attempts to artificially reduce the scale of development to below the threshold for providing affordable housing will not be accepted. This proposal halves the amount of affordable housing already agreed by committee when agreeing the 36 dwellings, and does not integrate affordable with market, with no needed bungalows, which would be delivered in the other application. Policy H5, Woodhouse Neighbourhood Plan. Affordable housing provision should be spread throughout the development and be of equivalent design, such as they are virtually indistinguishable from the market housing. Clearly, this is not the case. MPPF paragraph 130 states, the local planning authority should avoid homes being built at low densities and ensure the development makes optimal use of the potential of each site by refusing applications which they consider fail to make efficient use of the land. This committee has already agreed that 3,600 dwellings can be accommodated on this site. That said, this is good reason for reduction in the number of dwellings on this site. I believe local opinion should be heard when making planning decisions, but in my view, there are better solutions to conform with the current policies in areas of layout, scale, housing mix, and outlined in the new local plan, Woodhouse Neighbourhood Plan, and the MPPF. Why have these policies if decisions do not reflect them? In conclusion, there are better solutions to meet the policies I have outlined, whilst meeting the aspirations of the Parish Council and the residents within the reduction in the number of dwellings on site. Remembering, I represent young people in the community who would like to purchase first-time homes. 5 beds will be out of reach from many of those young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Snart. Before we move on to the committee discussion, Ms Liggins, did you have anything you wanted to come back on there?
Just very briefly, just in relation to Mr Godfrey's comments about materials, there's a condition number 4 on your recommendation does request details to be submitted of proposed materials before any are placed on site. So that's a matter to be agreed. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case then, the committee will consider the application. If you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd wait till anybody else wanted to say anything, but clearly nobody else does. So I'm going to say something. Yeah, I mean, the residents through the Speaker and the Parish Council clearly approve of this second planning application for all the reasons which they've stated. I do find myself agreeing with Councillor Start in terms of policy H4, though, affordable housing. There are no affordable houses, and there's no bungalows. Where does that leave me? It leaves me with lots of positives and a very big negative, but I'll wait to hear what other people say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Yeah, I do agree. It is a shame that we're not seeing more affordable housing on this. Ms Liggins, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you can see on the layout plan that I talked about earlier, the turquoise units, 4 units are for affordable rented properties, affordable units, and 2 of the green units are for affordable shared ownership properties. So of the 15 houses, 6 are affordable units. That proportion meets the 40% policy requirement so the amount of affordable housing is policy compliant.
Thank you, Ms Liggins. Oh, sorry, just if you'd like to come in, Mr Upton.
Yes, and just really reiterating that point, I think it is set out within, if I can get my microphone on my screen to coordinate. There we go. Yes, paragraph 9.2.4 of the report, it does reaffirm that the position in terms of supply and tenure of the affordable housing was fixed by the Section 106 agreement, which was clearly before the policy was updated, but we are beholden really in certain terms regarding the Section 106 that was agreed at the outline stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goode, you wanted to come in?
I do have to agree with Councillor O'Neill that the size of the plots would be ideal for bungalows, so it is a bit disappointing on that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goode. Anyone else want to come in? Councillor Smidovic.
I just wanted to ask, could you remind me about the flooding and drainage? Did we actually deal appropriately with that?
Ms Liggins?
Yes, as set out in the extras report, there was a recommended condition 9 on the agenda that talked about a scheme to be submitted for surface water drainage, which the Lead Local Flood Authority had required for that condition. However, there is a separate application for the discharge of conditions relating to the outline application, and that matter of drainage is dealt with under that separate discharge of condition, and the LLFA have already confirmed that they don't have any objections to that application. So we've dropped it off. Condition 9, the drainage matter, would be a duplication if we left that condition on. So that's part of the recommendation in the extras, that we delete that for now and deal with that separately. But yes, it has been considered.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to come in? Councillor Boker, please.
Thank you. The only issue with, I don't know how rural this road is there a good bus service along there? Because the only problem with affordable houses in rural locations is that it's a nice idea, but the sustainability of travel is very poor, because if there's not a good bus service, they often don't have cars because they can't afford them. So actually sticking them in the countryside is not really the best of all deals. And I'm quite satisfied that the mix is good. I mean, 6 versus 15, the community seem happy with it. There's no objections. So I find it difficult to find a reason to not accept officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Boker. Ms Liggins, do you want to come back on that? In that case, then Councillor Fryer, please.
Thank you. Could I just clarify, or could we just clarify, are you making the proposal to accept officer's recommendation, Councillor Boker? Second. I think particularly as the residents have shown that in great detail their approval, and they're the ones that live there. So therefore, I get the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Ms Liggins, did you want to come in?
Just to say that the proposal should include reference to the extras report about the modification of those two conditions or deletion of them.
Yes, understood. You both happy with that, Councillors Baker and Fryer? Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. In that case then, if nobody else wants to come in, we will move to the vote. So all those in favour of the motion that we've got?
That's 9-4, Chair.
Thank you. Those against?
And that's 1 against, so that motion is carried.
Thank you very much, Mr Howard. Thank you, committee. In that case then, we will move on. Yeah, if anybody who's in the gallery would like to leave at this point, you're very welcome to do so. Moving on. We have item 5B. P/22/1947/2, Quarry Hill Grange Residential Home, Watling Street, Mount Sorrel. No. Thank you all. So yes, as I was saying, we're now on to item 5B, Quarry Hill Grange Residential Home, Watling Street, Mount Sorrel. I would like to refer to the planning officer, Mr Reid. Mr Reid, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is application P221947/2. It's an application that includes both a combination of a change of use of a care home and physical works, including an extension to the building and an extension to its car park. The site is in Mount Sorrel. Those who will have visited and seen the site, it's sort of a more elevated street and land off Crown Lane and Watling Street in a sort of confined site itself. The building is positioned on the sort of southwestern point and faces in towards its own garden area. There's various trees within the site itself, in and around, and the application site is also within the Mount Sorrel Conservation Area. The building itself is not listed, although it is, certainly its older parts are over 100 years old, and the advice and comments from the conservation area note its history. The slide in front of us now is an aerial image from Google. It's, as you can see, quite heavily vegetated around the site. There's vehicular access off Watling Street between two stone piers into the site. The current car park or parking provision within the site isn't laid out formally. There's more just a general gravel area and with ad hoc parking available for what's approximated to be around 8 parking spaces. The care home itself, based on the application, is shown to have 19 bedrooms, and the application form also notes that it has 8 full-time staff and 8 part-time staff, the equivalent of 3 full-time. We're just going to have a couple of slides now of photos of the site and surroundings to help put it in context for anyone that may not have seen it on the ground. These two are from Crown Lane on the western side. You can see the rendered part of the building there. Part of the proposal, as mentioned and detailed in the report, is to demolish a relatively modest part of the building and in its place build a new two-storey extension. That essentially is this rendered part of the building we're looking at here. In its place would be a two-storey element with a pitched roof, and that area of wall would be sort of retained or restored following this part of the building's removal. On top left of the photo is the access off Watling Street between the stone piers into the driveway with the building on your left. The bottom right is taken from the garden area, looking at the front of the building itself. Again, similar here, top left is obviously the front, and similar. The top right shows the part of the building to be proposed to be demolished, as well as the location of where that new extension is proposed to be. Again, a couple of the bottom photos. Bottom left gives a bit more of a context to the site with the adjacent land, which is outside of the walled area where the two roads meet. Bottom right, again, gives an idea of I guess primarily the driveway area, as well as, which is of particular relevance in relation to where the proposed car park is extended, or proposed to extend on the left as we look at it, as we're looking at there, it's the vehicle access in the distance. This is an extract from the proposed site layout. As you can see, in the sort of dark orange area is the proposed extension to the car park. It would result in a total of 12 car parking spaces in what would be a sort of more formally laid out car park compared to the existing arrangement. It's not too clear on this image, but in that sort of towards the bottom left or on the western side is where the proposed extension is to be, where the sort of the building steps. We'll see perhaps a slightly clearer image on the floor plan. Got just a couple of the floor plan, or the two floor plans to go through briefly now. As mentioned, the proposal is to create a total of 9 flats in the building. There would be 4 at ground floor and 5 at first floor. 6 of them would have 1 bedroom, 3 of them would have 2 bedrooms. This floor plan sort of gives an idea of the scale in terms of the footprint of the proposed extension, because you can see in the dark area of that red-coloured flat, that's the area of the proposed extension. This is the proposed first floor plan. Again, it follows a similar flat layout to that of the ground floor, except to one end, instead of a larger flat, there's 2 flats, which means there's 5 at first floor. This is an extract from the plan that shows how the car parking is intended to be created through that expansion. Again, there's a slight change of levels across the land, including the garden. So as you can see, it's a bit dark. It's not too bad. On the bottom image on the plan shows the sort of retaining walls that would support the extended car park. Turning more towards the sort of planning policy considerations, the proposal is essentially a form of residential use seeking to change to an alternative form of residentials. Care homes are classified as C2 residential as far as planning law is concerned, and the proposed flats are use class C3, all within the broader definition of residential. The site itself, it's perhaps clearer in the application report, but this is an extract from the recently adopted plan. As you can see, the dark dashed line shows the settlement boundary for Mount Sorrel. If you can see the cursor, that is where the site is again, and on the bottom right, that's a slightly zoomed in, albeit blurry image, just showing the site within the settlement, just for context. In terms of the considerations of the application has been running for some time, and during the course of the application, there's been various additions of information, including ecological and tree information, which are set out in the report. It's also, as mentioned, it's also in the conservation area. As detailed in the report, in terms of the actual physical changes proposed, the extension and the extension to the car park are both considered to not materially impact or harm the significance of the conservation area. In terms of parking and access, the report details how the proposal to change from a 19-bedroom care home to a 9-flat development is not considered to have a material impact in terms of parking requirements or vehicular movements. The report has a sort of bullet-pointed summary of the Harway's comments, which perhaps could have been improved. There's members may have seen as relatively long comments from the Harway Authority on the council's website that have been received. To clarify the Harway's position, that the local Harway's Authority's advice is that the proposal does not represent an intensification of the use of the site. Their comments are relatively lengthy, and they've included what's called a TRIX assessment of the number of movements to and from the site associated with both the existing care home use and the proposed 9-flat use. Their position or their assessment concludes that there is no material increase in parking or access requirements from that. But in their broader comments, they have referred to their standards, which refer to access widths and visibility displays and so on, which would ordinarily be expected or sought for as part of a residential development. However, perhaps the report didn't make it clear in the comments, in the summary of the Harway's comments, was that they advised that based on the then assessment of the two uses, of the existing use and the proposed use, it would be unreasonable for the LHA to request amendments to the scheme. That wasn't detailed in quite that detail in the summary of the LHA, but for members' awareness, the LHA comments do make that point. So in terms of the authorities, as the planning authority's assessment, we're content that the proposal provides adequate parking and access, and indeed I think it's condition 8 is recommended to secure the parking provision prior to the occupation of the development as proposed. More briefly, in terms of biodiversity and trees impact, there are a number of trees subject to TPOs on the site, and the site is in a conservation area, and therefore trees benefit from the protection in that regard. The authority has received advice from the council's tree officer, and we're content, and the advice is that they are content that there's no material impact on any TPO trees or trees of significance, and those that are proposed to be removed are of limited amenity value. And finally, regard is given to the impact on residential amenity, including those properties nearest to the site, which are perhaps nearest to part of the proposed extension to the car park. Again, the extension to the building itself is generally away from any nearby properties, and it's for the reasons set out in the report. The change of use and the change to the car park as well isn't considered to materially impact on any of the privacy or other amenities of those properties. And to conclude, the proposal is considered to accord with the development plan, and therefore why officers recommend approval for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reid. This is normally the part where we'd move on to speakers, but we just had Councillor Wesley, and as mentioned at the top of the meeting, he's not able to make it. But he has sent a statement which I will read out now. I note the recommendation to approve this application and thank officers and consultees for all their work. My reasons for calling this in have largely been addressed by the various consultees, with Highways recently stating that parking would not be a concern to them. That follows their view that there would be little impact on traffic. From my perspective, and being on the ground, traffic and parking is increasingly becoming a problem within the centre of Mount Sorrel. I note that Leicestershire Highways applied pragmatism for flats, which I think is misguided. In my view, 12 spaces is too few, adding stress to an overdeveloped village. Further, the traffic in Mount Sorrel is now unbearable for many residents, and the Highways report does not reflect reality. I am pleased that the proposed development is expected not to detract from the conservation area, but I would add that the village is overdeveloped and the extra dwellings adds additional stress to a very busy village. That's it. With that, then we'll move on to consideration of the application. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to pick up about the car parking because currently they've got 8 car parking spaces which aren't marked out. And then if you've got 9 one-bedroom flats, well, that could be 9 cars. And then with your 2-bedroom flats, it's possible that it could be another 2 cars or maybe 3. So that would take it to 12. So they really do need the car parking marked out. Other than that, I can't see a problem. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Mr. Reid, have you got anything to come back on that, or no? Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Smithovitz.
On the parking, my only concern was I wouldn't like to drive into this one particular space because it looked like a cliff edge to the house below. So I did ask while I was there, mindful of my parking, whether there be any retaining wall or even something that you could feel something against your tyres, because I couldn't see anything there at all. And also the other side of the building, there was a shared drive, and I recognise that that is a civil matter, but I don't know if there is any parking when you go into that shared drive to the right. That was the only thing I was really concerned.
Thank you, Councillor Smithovitz. Mr. Reid, did you want to come respond to that?
Yes, I guess only briefly. Yes, as we saw on the site, if for context, I appreciate if I can sort of hover the mouse to, I think it's roughly this area on the site visit. Again, the gradient of land, it's higher here compared to these properties here, and there isn't an obvious barrier. I guess that a couple of points to make would be the situation isn't too, in terms of what's proposed in this area, isn't too dissimilar to what is currently there. The only change is a slight formalising of this with, I guess, a new surface rather than gravel. And I guess the crux of the matter is would it be necessary in planning terms to require any sort of barrier or wall? I'm not convinced we can require it as such, given the existing situation, which isn't too different, but I understand the point.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Mr. Upton.
Sorry, yeah, back at all the points that Mr. Reid just mentioned, but also just from my observation from the site and just looking at the plan, a couple of issues there. The general use of that site, if people are accessing the parking bays, which was against the wall that we saw earlier, they would be turning in or out of that space, so less likely to be towards that adjacent property. And similarly, the impact of any other interventions in terms of in the ground might have further impacts in terms of trees. So I think the proposal is reasonable, and as Mr. Reid said, in terms of planning reasons to require anything more, I'm not sure we have those in front of us. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Upton. Are you happy with that, Councillor Smidovitz? Anything you want to respond to?
I'll respond. I just can imagine this bench without this block at the end.
Knocking all
And
your
that's
papers
what
off.
it looked like to me, that you just drive to the end and.
Thank you, Councillor Smidovitz.
You probably have seen it from the other angle and know what's there, so that's how it appeared.
Thank you.
Comment on my own driving, not other people's.
I've got Councillor Fryer and then Councillor Boker. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much. Bearing in mind what the buildings are being used for at the moment, and I note that on page 81 of the officer's report, the main report, that the care home is limited to 8 undefined parking spaces to serve 19-bed care home, plus staff requirements, including 8 full-time staff and 8 part-time staff. So the fact that this is having 12 parking places, which they've worked out, I note, is sort of 1 per bedroom, and they're also having a cycle store. The other thing we have to bear in mind also is that a 19-bed care home has far more visitors, I would think, than a domestic flats. So I see no problem. I think they've done the best they can. And knowing what care homes are, there's awful lot of traffic in and out of a care home. So I have no problem with this at the moment. I think they've worked as best they can. So therefore, I'm happy to go with recommend officers' recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Boker.
Can the officer confirm that the TPO trees will stay in situ? And my second question is, will any current residents be moved out before development starts? That's a joke.
Thank you, Councillor Boker.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the TPO trees, yes, we've been advised, so I should have flagged up during the presentation, there's a relatively small addition on the extras report, which is in relation to the TPOs. Since the drafting of the report, the Council's Tree Officer reviewed the document of the tree preservation order, which dates back to, I think it was 1973, and a number of the trees are addressed on that. And yet they have sort of reiterated that, no, none of the trees subject to TPO or the TPO would be harmed by the proposal. And it's also noted there is an associated tree report and mitigation measures to ensure that the other the trees that would remain as part of the development wouldn't be harmed by the expansion of the car park and so on.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to respond to that, Councillor Boker?
Yes, that's fine. You didn't answer my second question, but never mind. I propose officer's recommendation.
I think we have a proposal on the table. Is that a second? I can hear there. Yeah, you're seconding that motion, Councillor Boker?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. As a resident of Mount Sorrel, I wouldn't want to leave this meeting without it getting out, if it got out, that I had the opportunity to comment about parking in Mount Sorrel and passed up the opportunity to do so. I take Councillor Roberts' points about current car parking, and I also take Councillor Fry's points. If anything, I think demand for parking at that site would actually go down. Having said that, parking in Mount Sorrel itself is a bit of a nightmare. basically because this committee passed a planning application for a coffee shop at the bottom of Crown Lane, and all the residents who use that coffee shop, and it's a very nice coffee shop, park on Crown Lane. So getting up and down Crown Lane is quite difficult. And as a fellow councillor mentioned today on the visit, if an emergency vehicle needed to get up there, it would be quite difficult. But that's not anything to do with this application. In terms of this application, I've got no objections to parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it further. I'd just like to support the comments about the dangerous car parking situation on the side where you basically, if it was a stately home, you'd call it a ha-ha. You're basically driving on, there's an invisible drop. And especially at night, in the dark, it would be dangerous. So if anything could be done to improve that, it would be very worthwhile.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haynes. Do you want to respond to that, officers?
Sorry, I was going to say, help if we put it in as an informative note rather than a recommendation.
Yeah, I think that
If we
sounds.
put it in as a note
I think that sounds good. Yeah.
to the developer that concerns have been raised, not necessarily with the amount of parking, but the situation, the siting of parking and the possible inconvenience. So would that be possible?
I'm just looking at the detail of the plans, Councillor. The plan that you can see in front of you does show a white line, which I take to be the retaining structure around the plans. You see where you've got the red tree removals. So those couple of banks of parking there where you've got the yellow, down the middle of the parking space, you've got some steps down to what I assume will be a hard landscape feature, which is the yellow semicircle. It looks to me as if there is, as part of the retaining structure, there is an edge there. And that is the white line, which you can just about see on that diagram. I think Councillor Smidovich's concern was more that area, which is the flatter area within the trees, which, as we can see from the plan, is more heavily treed. And that was why I made the comment about any further intervention into the ground there could potentially have an impact on trees, and wouldn't, particularly with the levels being relatively level, have such a concern as the area in terms of the other two banks of parking that I've just mentioned. Let me just have a look at conditions. Is there anything else in the report? Yeah, so we've got condition 8 in the papers. So development shall not be occupied until such time as the parking and turning facilities have been implemented in accordance with relevant drawings received by the authority, and thereafter the on-site parking and turning provision shall be kept available for such uses. So as part of that, we can check the details there, accord with those wishes. Have you got access to those at the minute? Those drawings? Yeah.
No, unless it's this. I think the site plan is.
So there will be something as part of the retaining structure. We can, it has been checked out. The Highway Authority are happy with it. I don't think there's anything further that we can add at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Any further comments from members of the committee? No? In that case, we have a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Fryer and seconded by Councillor Boker. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous in support, Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So with that, that brings us on to item 5C. I don't know, we are halfway through, if members are minded to have a quick 5-minute comfort break. Does that sound good? We'll see you back here at 17 minutes past 6. Thank you. Thank you, members. I think, is that everybody back? Are we all back? Yeah? Okay, let's crack on then. So this brings us to item 5C, P/24/2352/2. And I would like to refer to the planning officer for this one, Mr. Worley. Mr. Worley, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Evening all. This is an application for a single self-build dwelling in Seagrave. I understood you visited it earlier. Sorry, I wasn't there. The site is within Seagrave. I think it was valuable that you visited because we aren't talking about something either beyond the edge of the village or even on its edge. It's pretty much in the centre. But, and this is the reason it's here tonight, the jagged shape of the limits to development around Seagrave in the old new local plan and the brand new local plan actually excludes this parcel of land. It steps along exactly its boundaries as it happens. We're recommending approval of this, as you know, and hence the need to come before committee. The application says for a self-built house, occupied essentially the central part of the site. As you'll have seen, it's currently part of the garden of number 2 Water Lane, which is the one sort of disappearing off the top of this particular slide. Tree line to the front, quite an impenetrable band of trees for those of you that weren't there, and also a row of trees, deciduous trees on its south boundary, framing the site and offering some screening property as well. The design of the proposed house is inspired by an agricultural theme. This is the second conception, second approach to designing the site, and has been strongly guided by our urban design officers to reach this position. The previous one was rather more suburban, not meaning to demean it, and these changes have been made to fit into its more agricultural and rural surroundings. There are some modern flourishes. You can see to the large gable and glazing feature in the rear, but again, if you've been on site, you'll appreciate this. It's almost impossible to go anywhere where that is easy to see. You really have to go searching for it, and certainly from public places, not visible at all, because they're all forward-looking. There's a few more illustrations of the house. These top two, excuse me, top two images being probably the most important, because that's the view anyone in a public place would be able to take. And bear in mind, this is still all behind that bank of evergreen trees. The issues with this one is, as I said earlier, is that it's contrary to the local plan, and I take no pleasure at all of being the officer that has to present the first report to you that says our new local plan on day 3 is out of date. In this particular context, being quite a serious undersupply of self-build housing. So just to use a better set of language, in planning, out of date doesn't necessarily mean old. It means circumstances have rendered something out of date. So in this particular context, we're out of date the minute the ink is dry on the local plan, I'm afraid. That plunges us into the old game of tilted balance, harm against benefits. And in this case, basically, we see very little harm at all. The design's good. Parking and access would make use of the existing driveway, which functions perfectly well. Trees, those around the periphery that I mentioned, will all be retained and can be protected. They're not threatened in any way, because there's quite a gap between them and where the house would be built. Residential amenity is fine. It's quite sparse in that part of Seagrave, so the window-window relationships that we get involved in from time to time are easily met and exceeded by miles. And the benefit is a okay, only one, but a contribution to our quite desperate self-build land supply statistics. So putting those together, we consider the benefits outweigh the harms, if indeed there are any at all, it has to be said. Hence the recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Borley. With that, then that brings us on to speakers. We just have one for this application, and that's Mr. Matley on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Matley, once you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute is remaining, Ms. Dobson will let you know whenever you're ready.
Good evening, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in relation to this application. It's a proposal for a single self-built dwelling, which members will see from the committee report is recommended for approval by your professional planning officers. In terms of consultation responses, the position is very clear following the update sheet. There are no neighbour objections, no objection from the parish council, and no objections from any technical consultees. All matters raised during the application process have been fully addressed and are comprehensively set out in the committee report. Having worked in planning for nearly 20 years, it's rare to encounter an application being heard at committee that is less controversial than this. Members will also note that the scheme before you today is a result of a collaborative process with the council. We've worked closely with the case officer, Jim Worley, throughout the application, and the design has been amended to respond directly to the council's conservation, design, tree and amenity advice. As a result, the scheme has evolved into one where officers are satisfied would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area, safeguard residential amenity and sit comfortably within its surroundings. Given that the application is recommended for approval, I do not intend to rehearse detailed planning arguments this evening. Those matters are clearly and robustly addressed in the committee report, and members are entitled to place significant weight on the professional judgment of their officers. What I would like to highlight, however, is consistency in decision making. Members may recall that two very similar self-build proposals for single dwellings at Rowfleet and Sileby were reported to Planning Committee in November 23 and August 24. Both of those applications were recommended for approval by officers and went on to receive approval from the committee, including a unanimous approval at Rowfleet. Those decisions demonstrate the council's positive approach to well-designed, carefully sited self-build development where impacts are appropriately managed. This proposal follows that same approach. It delivers a high-quality self-build dwelling that my client would build personally, and that has been shaped through officer input. It attracts no technical objections, and it carries a clear professional recommendation for approval, given the established benefits that would arise. In those circumstances, members can be confident that granting planning permission would be sound, consistent, well evidenced, and fully aligned with both the officer recommendation and previous committee decisions on sensitive self-build development. Accordingly, it's respectfully requested that members agree with the recommendation of your planning officers and grant planning permission, subject to the conditions and obligations set out in the report, which we are fully agreeable to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Worley, was there anything there you'd like to respond to? No? Okay. Well, with that, then we'll move on to the committee discussion. Do any members wish to speak? Just pop your mic on, Councillor Smidovitz. Was that a recommendation? Yeah. Councillor Boker is seconding it. Okay. Does anybody want to add anything? No? We'll move on to a vote then. All those in favour? Excellent.
It's unanimous, Chair, so the motion is carried.
That was nice and easy, wasn't it? Relatively painless. Thank you very much. That brings us on to the last item for this evening then, item 5D, P/252155/2, 389 New Ashby Road, Loughborough. Councillor Smidovitz is going to recuse herself for this application. And then I would like to pass over once again to Mr. Worley. Mr. Worley.
Yeah, thanks again. This is an example of type of applications we see quite a lot of to change the use of a conventional, for want of a better word, dwelling to one of these very small children's homes. Very small in this case, meaning just 2 children being looked after by just 3 members of staff who would be on a rota system. So 2 in the day, 1 at night, and a handover about 8 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. No physical changes to the house whatsoever, so it would not overtly appear to be anything different for what it is now. Concerns have been expressed about comings and goings, but when you pitch that level of staffing against a dwelling, this is a 3-bedroom dwelling, occupied by a family, you can quickly do the maths and work out that it's not going to be dramatically more, in fact, quite conceivably less. I mean, sure, they'll have food deliveries, but so do I. And we might need the plumber around occasionally, but so do I, unfortunately, and so on and so on. But, you know, there's no parents, there's no commute to work every day, and so on and so on. And limited to just 2 children. We can make sure that's the case with a condition, really to reflect the basis on which we've assessed it, rather than to set a ceiling. Within the building is a 3-bedroomed semi-detached dwelling. The bedrooms will still be bedrooms. One of them would be used by staff, so it would combine as their like office and administration space, but also the sleeping quarters for the overnight member of staff. So, so still a bedroom in essence. There's 3 parking spaces at the premises. Again, some of you did a site visit this morning, would have seen them in a row. You know, with 2 members of staff and the occasional visitor for odds and ends, that is considered adequate, and again compares equally or favourably to a house occupied by a family. So the policy considerations for an application of this nature are found in policy H1 of the local plan. That says that we seek to develop and provide the housing stock for all members of our community. So sure, this is niche, but there's a need there nevertheless, and policy H1 means this just as much as it does, you know, mainstream housing supply and the figures of hundreds and thousands we sometimes use. Parking and access, as I say, is already there, and we don't expect it to be overwhelmed. And residential amenity, I've mentioned comings and goings already, quite comparable, and noise and disturbance, 2 children in a 3-bedroomed house, not that unusual. So all in all, we find no objection to this and recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. So as we had earlier, we've only got 1 speaker on this item. And in this occasion, it's Councillor Bradshaw, the ward councillor, who's not able to make it. So I will read her statement out now. I'll try to do it justice and get it in 3 minutes as well if I can. Thank you for agreeing for this to be read. My sincere apologies I can't be present due to my psychotherapy client work this evening. As you'll have seen, I called this application in for several reasons. Having lived in the ward since 1988, I know the area extremely well and have seen changes over the years. The community sadly continues to be fragmented, with increasing numbers of HMOs and applications being granted. This property was refused HMO status in 2017. In November 2025, the pre-application showed that it would have been rejected, hence the applicant now applying for it to be converted into a children's home. If granted, the 2 elderly residents who have lived over 40 years at 387 New Ashby Road will be sandwiched between a children's home and a student HMO. Not ideal. These residents have also written in with their objections. For many years, families had lived there. Now families are being forced out due to a rise in other use. The area already has a parking issue. Staff with their cars will exacerbate the problem despite there being space for 3 cars, albeit a very tight fit. No doubt they will use the road to park on. There have already been accidents along New Ashby Road with limited vision from parked cars and a through route from the road and bus stop. People walking through are blind spotted. I note that the proposal is for 2 children to be housed at the property and schooled away from the home, and sincerely hope that any children are suitably placed. Previous experience with the children's home in Ashby Ward created havoc for neighbours with persistent noise of the children and the constant smell of cannabis from that property. I know the issues since I was a councillor dealing with all the complaints. I totally appreciate children need a place to live, yet a more suitable area and location can be found. This is the 3rd loss of a family home to a children's home in 1 year in my ward. the last one being November 2025. It seems a growing trend that when a house is bought, if it cannot be converted into a HMO, then the owners apply for it to be a children's home. Residents are alarmed at this on top of the continued loss of family homes due to HMOs. After all, houses in this area were built for families. Therefore, I trust that after consideration, as a committee, you will agree with me and other objectors to this planning application being rejected. Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to respond to there, Mr. Worley?
Yeah, Mayor, Chair, please. Just one thing in there. This the use of the word sandwiching. That's particularly a aspect of the policy that H3 that applies to HMOs. There's a line in there that says a family home shouldn't be sandwiched by HMOs either side. We're not dealing with an HMO tonight, so that doctrine doesn't apply here. And anyway, in my view, this would be closer to a family home than an HMO anyway. It would function in very much the same way. I do have some sympathy with persistent noise from children, having my grandkids living with me at the moment, but I'll let that pass.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. With that, then we'll move on to the committee discussion. Are there any members who would like to speak? Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Good. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. We've had in Shepshed several of these smaller children's homes, and the main reason for them to sort of be in existence is it's actually better for the children to be in a smaller group home than lost in somewhat a larger group home. Usually when they happen, they do have an impact on the local schools. And I see here in the application on page 112 that it is going to be near a primary school. And if you look at the ages, it's from 7 to 18. So it's not necessarily going to be teenagers. It could actually be an older child or even a 7-year-old. So whilst it's unfortunate to see a family home go, I'd rather it be a lived-in property than just sitting there vacant, if that makes any sense. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Mr. Worley, is there anything that you'd like to respond to? No. Okay. Councillor Good, please.
Can I just ask for clarification on the HMO thing? On number 7.1, it does say that obviously one or two unrelated people, over 3 people in a property who are unrelated is an HMO. Does that count with a children's home, with it being 2 unrelated people plus there will be somebody else sleeping there, won't there? The member of staff. So it is 3 unrelated people in one property. Does that count when it comes to a children's home in reference to the 7.1 and the sandwiching point?
In theory, there's a chance that 2 kids could be receiving fare that are related, if maybe they've lost their parents or something like that. But I think the general pattern of these things is that the children are unrelated and, they're almost certainly not going to be related to their carers, or they wouldn't be there in the first place, quite frankly.
Thank you, Mr. Worley. Councillor Good, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I was just asking because it is there in 7.1 as something to note about an HMO licence.
Mr. Worley?
Yeah, that was new. I mean, we've dealt with about 50 of these, and that particular point was new to me. I didn't quite appreciate they need a licence. So they need a licence, and there's a separate regime that they have to go through, as well as ours tonight. And one doesn't preclude or override the other. There's 2 hurdles in the path instead of just one.
Thank you, Mr. Worley.
Ordinarily, because if it was an HMO, then obviously that would be grounds to refuse, wouldn't it? If it was, we'd be asking, is it over the 10% threshold, etc., and what have you. So I'll just ask for clarification because of that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Good. I've got Councillor Fry next, and then Councillor Boker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the children's homes, and I note other councillors have mentioned it is more and more of a policy that children of a similar age that require to be in a children's home are kept in small units among other residents, so it's as normal as possible. I'm old enough to remember when there were children's homes that were almost institutions, and that is not how we want our children to be. I think I'm right in saying that the children who live in children's homes are only there till they're 18. After that, they are considered adults. They may still be under care, but they're not in a children's home. And I think with 3 bedrooms, it's not necessary that the person who's on duty at night actually sleeps. They're there on duty. There's 2 during the day and 1 at night. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that if it was a family home, I appreciate the elderly people next door, but a family of mum, dad, and 4 children could move in, and it would be even noisier and more parking. I mean, in my own road, I've known a house with 3 bedrooms to have 4 children and 5 cars in a terrace street, because each child, as it gets to 17, has a car. Mum has one for work and dad has one for work, so we can't do that. I think, and as to licensing things, although it's not under the care of the county council, they still have to be licensed, and it has to be a very thorough testing, because these are children. They need to have the best care. So I don't have a problem with it, and I would rather, as some people have said, it be a home for 2 children in desperate need rather than an HMO with 6 students, which it could be.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Boker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fryer? Yep. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Does anybody else wish to speak? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Show of hands, all those in favour of the motion.
That's unanimous, Chair, so the motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. So, moving on to item 6, list of applications determined under delegated powers. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this item? No? Okay. We're happy to note the report? Yeah. Lots of heads. Okay. Item 7, quarterly enforcement decisions report. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this report? No? Okay. Are we happy to note it? Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Well, that brings the meeting to a close then. I'd like to thank all the members who've substituted tonight. That's much appreciated. And Councillor Fryer for being Vice Chair for the evening. The next meeting will be Thursday, 5th of February, 2026, and I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much. 2 weeks today, indeed. Look at us. Thank you very much, everyone.